Good morning, students. Today we will be moving forward from where we left yesterday with regard to chapter 2 of strategic cost management and performance evaluation of the final syllabus. Yesterday we had covered the first half of this chapter. I hope things are clear to you. Today we will aim to cover the second half of this chapter and bring it to a closure, hopefully. In today's segment of the chapter, broadly the concepts that will be touched to understand the context of the modern business environment would be the following. 1. Theory of constraints. 2. Throughput accounting. 3. Supply chain management. And 4. Gain sharing arrangement and outsourcing. These are broadly the concepts that will be touched upon today in our session going forward. Now, to start with, we will now analyze the theory of constraints. I am referring to the Jan 19 edition of the study material. Now, while the study material has pages contained in it to explain the theory of constraints, let us look at it from a practical example perspective. Let me ask you students a simple question or present a case to you. Let us assume that there are two people who are walking on the street, A and B. Let us make an assumption that A is affected by polio in his right leg, while B is an absolutely normal person, not handicapped. Suppose these two people have to reach a particular destination which is 2 kilometers away and they have to start together, assuming that the mode of transport will be walking. In your opinion, just try to think which person, will it be A or B, who will be a cause for restricting the speed of the travel? Would it be A or B? We know that A is affected by polio while B is not. Just think, can A run at the same speed or walk at the same speed at which B can? Certainly not. So we understand that B will have to match up to A's speed, correct? And not expect it the other way around. Because if the other way around is going to be implemented, by which I mean B starts walking fast, then certainly what we will experience would be that B will be much ahead of A and probably will have to wait for A to catch up with him. Again, they start walking. At no point in time we will find that A walks faster than B. That is not possible. This is what is presented to us as the two concepts of bottleneck related machines, non-bottleneck related machines. In our example, you all would have guessed it, A will form the bottleneck machine and B will be the non-bottleneck machine. So we understand that from a production perspective, just as in our example, A was restricting B, in real life we will be hopefully able to understand that the bottleneck machine, which is kind of a key limiting factor, is what restricts the performance of the non-bottleneck machine, and it can't be the other way around. Because if the non-bottleneck machine starts working fast, then inventory will start piling up, which will not happen if the reverse is true. I hope that example is clear. Let us take another example from a production perspective itself, another example to understand the same concept. Now I am introducing two machines, machine A and machine B. Maybe you could open up an Excel sheet and try to populate this data to understand it better. So I have a column set aside for machine A and one for machine B. Now I am assuming that the number of hours available per month from a productivity perspective of machine A is 120, while that of machine B is assumed to be 240 hours per month. The next assumption is I want to manufacture a product X which must be processed first through machine B and then by machine A. The number of hours that is required to process the product X in machine A is 2 hours and machine B is 3 hours. Now, the maximum capacity that each machine can produce in a month individually would be, as far as machine A would be related, it can produce in the available 120 hours in a month based on 2 hours required per unit of X, only 60 units of X. Whereas machine B has a total availability of 240 hours in a month, takes 3 hours to manufacture one product of X, and therefore it can possibly go up to 80 units of product X in a month. So we see a mismatch here. Machine A is able to produce only 60 units of product X in a month if it is wholly dedicated for that activity, whereas machine B can go up to 80. Now this anomaly has to be matched. The next step is, let us analyze, however, to process 80 units of product X, how many hours of machine A would be required in a month? Obviously, it would be 80 units of X multiplied by 2 hours per unit of X required by machine A. It would be 160 hours, which is not available with machine A in a month. Therefore, we know that machine A cannot be stretched to go up to 80 units of X every month. So if someone were to ask us a question, how many units of product X can be manufactured in a month by our plant? We will not be able to tell that we can go up to 80 units, though we know machine B individually can produce 80 units of X, but A restricts us from going up to 80 because the capacity of A is only up to 60. Now, if we try to go ahead with B and try to manufacture 80 units, now just imagine, because machine A can produce only 60, it can process obviously only 60 out of those 80 in the current month. The balance 20 units which has been produced by by machine B will be lying as WIP to be processed only the next month. And when I say to lie as WIP, please do not forget the fact that we are in the subject strategic cost management and performance evaluation. The higher and higher the inventory we pile up, the higher and higher will be the cost from an inventory carrying cost perspective, which you have already learned in your EOQ, in your intermediate level materials management. Therefore, in other words, we understand we can't go up to 80 units because machine A is the bottleneck machine, or in other words, it is the key limiting factor which limits our ability to maximize the output. Now, if we want to maximize our profits, what should we do, or what needs to be done? Through this example, we understand in any situation, we must always try and exploit or use the bottleneck machine, which is in A in our example, to the maximum possible extent, because that is what restricts our progress. So we should not land up in a situation where bottleneck machine is underutilized. It must be fully utilized to the extent of 100%. Whereas non-bottleneck machine, if we try to utilize it 100%, like in our example by producing 80 units, we notice that unnecessarily we will be building up inventory and adding up to our cost. So the concept is very clear here, and we are able to clearly understand the difference between the bottleneck machine and the non-bottleneck machine. Now, this is what is primarily indicated in the study material through the theory part about theory of constraints. Okay, now when you read it, hopefully you will be able to understand it much better, but use as example. For example, if you go to page 22 of your Jan 19 edition, you notice in the last paragraph, the last sentence, this approach advocates that bottleneck resources or activities should be fully utilized, while non-bottleneck resources activities should not be utilized to 100% of their capacity, since it would result in increase in inventory, which we have understood through our example. Now, the operational measures of theory of constraints uses three key measures. One is throughput, which is defined as sales revenue minus unit level variable expenses, which does not include the unit level variable expense, does not include direct labor cost. Because when it comes to labor, we understand that it is not always possible to pay labor based on per unit basis. You might have to pay them a fixed monthly payment plus something which would be linked to the per unit. Therefore, it is left out. Now, throughput tries to analyze how much of sales revenue, or rather how much of difference between the sales revenue and unit level variable expense is generated per unit of time to try and maximize that. And then if you want to generate a throughput, which is your output, how do you get it? You must have made some capital investment in the form of fixed assets or so. So there is another input or a measure called the investment. And the third aspect is merely the existence of machinery will not get the product generated or produced. You will have to have some operating capital. Therefore, operating expenses are also required to be incurred. Now, there are two dimensions to this aspect. One is throughput, which is more from the revenue perspective, and the other two measures, which is investment and operating expense from the cost perspective. And obviously, if we are trying to maximize our profits, logically, what would we conclude? The throughput must be maximized, while the investment and the operating expenses representing the cost portion must be minimized. That is what is being explained through that particular paragraph. Now, on page 24, you will notice that the gentleman who has introduced this model, Goldratt, is suggesting 5 steps for improving performance. I guess it's very straightforward if you look at it. The components, we will not be explaining these as it is self-explanatory. Identify the constraint. In our example, if you might have noticed, machine A is a limiting factor or the bottleneck machine. Exploit the constraint. Now, what are we trying to say, communicate through this point? We should not, in our example, try to be in a situation where our monthly production of product X happens to be less than 60 units, because optimum capacity that can be generated by us in our plant is restricted by machine A at 60 units. Therefore, we must try and go up to 60 units to maximize our revenues. So exploit the constraint fully. And then the third point says subordinate and synchronize to the constraint. Now, what does this mean? We again going back to our example. Take this case. If you produce 80 units as per machine B, can you make machine A generate 20 more in the same month? Not possible. Therefore, what is the only other option? Once you exploit machine A fully by producing 60 units, it automatically means machine B should not be made to generate more than 60. So it gets restricted to that extent. Restriction is nothing but a subordination. Not only that, you subordinate B to A, also simultaneously, since machine B is also being made to generate only 60 that machine A generated of product X, you are synchronizing it to the bottleneck machine. And then you move on, elevate the performance of the constraint. Well, if you could improve upon machine A's performance in future, probably from 60 units, if machine B, through some process improvements or product engineering, you could try to make it as 61 or 62 or anything higher than 60, it adds to your profit. And therefore, we try to say, elevate the performance of the constraint. And in future, if you happen to encounter any new issues or constraints in some other area, try to repeat this process and get the benefit out of it, is what is explained through this chart. Now, I leave it to you for self-study. Moving on, we would notice the next concept is a throughput accounting. As I said to you, throughput generally refers to the returns that you generate, the output that will be generated by the plant and therefore resulting in sales or revenue. Here we notice in the throughput accounting on page 25, line 3, it states that with this important goal in mind, they focused on the return per product per bottleneck hour. So we have a key limiting factor or a bottleneck issue machine. So for every hour of that machine which is critical to us, how much of money is being generated out of the production through that machine is what we are trying to look at. So there is a formula given. Throughput accounting ratio is equal to throughput per bottleneck minute divided by the factory cost per bottleneck minute. And you have an example, an illustration given, fairly self-explanatory. In case you have doubts, please revert to me about that. No issues.